And I will try to remind you before you leave to take them off mute. I tend to forget to do that, but we'll try. All right. I have a motion. Moved by Susan Irwin and seconded by Lynn Cleggis that council agree to suspend rules of the procedural bylaw to move delegations / presentations and public meetings up in the order to follow number 5, mayor's remarks. And further, the agenda for the regular council meeting held May 23rd, 2023 be approved as, are there any amendments, Kathy?
Yes, there are, Madam Mayor. So under the closed session, there is one more personnel matter.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure, pecuniary interest and general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council?
You have two.
Okay, Dan?
Yes, Madam Mayor, 95-2023 road closure is relevant.
Okay, and why?
Oh,
Oh, your sister.
Sister.
Okay. And Susan?
I have a conflict with item number 7B, the road closure for Rickards and Pyle. My property abuts the Pyle property and their neighbors, so
All right.
declaring a conflict.
All right. We will note that in the minutes. I now have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that the minutes of the regular council meeting held May the 9th, 2023 be approved as presented. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All those in favor? Carried. Mayor's remarks. I am not going to have any remarks tonight, given the size of the agenda. I think we best keep going and stay on track. Does anyone else have any burning issues they need to share? Seeing none, we'll move on then to delegations. And our first delegation is Kara Chesney, MNP, regarding our audited financial statements, which was in our package. Welcome, Kara.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to try and share this. I swear I do this all the time. Give me 1 second. Okay, share screen. I also don't have my mouse. No, it's okay. I have the carpal tunnel, like a big giant mouse. So that's, yeah. Okay.
Would you prefer questions as you go or?
I can definitely do questions as I go.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So thanks again for having me today. I'm the audit partner that is responsible for the audit team that comes out to complete the audit. We do come out at the start of the year and then we finish the rest. Sorry, we come out in the winter, January, November, December, and then we come out and finish in about March and April. So that's not me, I swear. The objectives for today is just to discuss the status and some of the items on this we have finished. I said this presentation last week. So we have finished some of the items, as well as communicate significant matters of which you should be aware and to discuss any matters of interest. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer, hopefully with Michael's assistance as we go. This is our audit report. So as usual, we have what's called a clean or an unqualified audit report. So we have nothing to bring to your attention in terms of believing the financial statements are materially misstated. We do our work at a materiality of 450 that is up from last year. It is totally driven off of basically inflows or revenues into the township. So when that goes up, the materiality goes up. However, we do our work actually to a lesser number than that. We look at anything basically that's over $22,000. So that's what we have is what's called a posting threshold. So if we find an error, we would bring that to your attention of anything over 22,000. The audit is substantially complete. So we finished a few weeks ago with the exception of just sort of finalizing the financial statements. So there's a final review that has happened. So the draft you have tonight is the draft we're proposing would be approved. And then the final M&P review, which as of last week, we just needed one more final review that has happened. It happened mid last week. So that is complete. And then we need the receipt of the management representation letter, which I sent to Michael. It has to be dated today. So we can't get that until till we actually get the statements, or sorry, have the meeting, and then obviously council approval of the statements themselves. So that doesn't happen until today. There were no difficulties encountered during the course, so no change to our initial audit plan and no disagreements or difficulties with management. So we do, just to give you an idea, we do spend about 2 to 3 weeks physically on site, and we do ask a lot of questions. So Michael and his team are very patient with us and provide us a lot of documentation, but they were very timely and we received everything we asked for. There are no new audit or accounting standards to bring to your attention. In terms of the audit, so what we do, and I probably have explained this before to people who have seen me present, an audit is focused on risks. So where we think that the financial statements have the biggest risks, and that's where we spend the majority of our time reviewing information. So we look at material balances, we look at key transactions, and any other significant item. So we kind of go through the whole set of financial statements, and anything, we do some level of work on almost all the balances. But where we focus on more specific risks, we can see at the bottom here. So we're always concerned as accountants or auditors with revenue, making sure that, you know, it's not being manipulated, that the numbers are reasonable. So we do a lot of work around revenue, specifically around deferred revenue. So you may have received money in advance that it really shouldn't be revenue yet because it's dedicated to a certain project that's happening next year. So we look at all those agreements, and we verify that that's been treated properly. And we also look at tax revenues in quite a bit of detail. And this is mostly around, and this is just a procedure, you know, when we see fraud in an organization, we have not seen it here. So this isn't to say we have seen this. It typically is around tax rate revenues and preferred rates to employees or their friends or family. So we do some testing around that just to make sure that we do lots of testing around tax revenue, but we do some specific procedures around making sure that nobody's getting a deal, basically. We do also look at the controls in their organization and make sure that the controls are in place to make, you know, payments are happening with approvals, that, you know, things aren't just going up, the purchases are happening because they are needed, things like that. So, and we do that testing. We didn't identify any significant areas there. I do have some small comments here. But in terms of the audit outcomes, there was one proposed adjustment to set up an asset under a capital lease and a related liability. And in terms of internal control weaknesses, these are fairly minor. They're just more things to put in place. So no formal policy in place for authorizing, reviewing, and documenting pay changes. There is a policy. It just tends to differ based on the department, but there's nothing just written down. So that we would recommend that you would write that down. And there's no formal written down policy in place for estimating useful lives. And I know there's a big project in place to move the capital asset registers around into a new system. So I'm sure there will be coming out of that. Any questions so far? Okay, this is probably not the most exciting topic. All right, statement of financial position. So this is really for any of the new council members who aren't familiar with, this is really the balance sheet. It's, you know, and we do present it a certain way because we're required to for municipalities, but it's the financial assets of the organization. So it's essentially if you took all of the assets of the organization and you subtracted all the liabilities, what would you have left? Okay, so think of it, I always say to people, think of it like your house is worth 400,000 and your mortgage is worth 300,000, well, your equity is 100,000. So same thing. So the statement of financial position reports the total value of assets and liabilities. Majority of these things are at cost or at, if we look at the tangible capital assets, cost less depreciation. Okay. The information also presents the liabilities. And then you can see at the bottom that the accumulated surplus or what we would call the equity has improved from the year before. So you have added some surplus to during the year, which is a good thing given, you know, inflationary costs and the, you know, as things, you always want to set aside a certain amount of capital for future improvements, and those things are not getting cheaper. So you generally want to be adding every year so that you can meet those commitments. The accounts payable itself, if you look there, it's gone from 1.7 to about 2.6 million. It's just due to a balance owing to Crane's construction at the end of the year. All normal work, it just was timing of when things got paid for the village project. This is a history of the capital asset additions ever since 2014. So you're going to see here, there has been a slight increase over the year before. Again, that's part of that is just the cost of things going up. And the average estimated consumption is about 63%. So basically the assets are about 63% consumed.
Kara, can I just ask, what happened in 2015 and 2020?
Oh, I knew you were gonna ask that. Do you remember? There was a big road project.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, Charlotte Lake Village would be the 2020, 2015. The big spikes are when we get grants. That's the only way we can afford to do them. So that would be Waggerville or the other Fifth Lake Road. Thank you, CO.
That's where it's going. These are this is just to show you the breakdown of where items were spent. So you can see the biggest capital asset addition is almost always, and it's pretty consistent year to year, unless there's a big project, is often the roads. Okay. The next big one would be building and improvements, and that's just due to the nature of the cost of those items. A lot of the other items are fairly, vehicles, machinery, things like that typically are fairly stable and less expensive. This is your surplus for the year. So this is essentially how much, the breakdown. So that we had an accumulated operating surplus of about 5.5 million. There was 5.6 million. There's a net investment in tangible capital assets of 41. So that just means how much you've invested in the assets over time, and the total reserves or that you've set aside. And you can see the breakdown in the statements. So the reserves are working capital, contingencies, road equipment, general government. They were about 5.5 million at the end of the year. They are pretty consistent with the year before. And then the consolidated statement of operations is really what we would call in a profit organization, the income statement. So what did you bring in during the year in terms of revenues, and what did you spend? So property taxes did increase by 4%. So you went from about 13.9 million in total revenue up to 14.7, with the biggest change in property tax. There was an increase in government grants consistent with the funding agreements, and there was an increase in investment income consistent with increased interest rates. So some of those investments are being invested in earning a smaller, like a return. And obviously when interest rates go up, you're going to earn more income there. This is just a breakdown of the expenditures. So transportation is the highest, followed by protection and general government. So that's where the majority of the expenses are going towards. So summary of findings, and I apologize, the number is just over 4 million in terms of assets. Half of annual expenditures are related to transportation, followed by protection and general government. No significant accounting standards to note for 2020. There are a couple new ones coming for next year. So all that means is you're going to see some new things on the financial statements next year that you won't have seen in the past. And I did throw in a little summary that, so the first is just around financial instruments. So you do have financial instruments are generally investments. There are some investments on the balance sheet, and the presentation of that's going to change slightly for next year. Okay. And then the big one is around asset retirement obligations. So asset retirement obligations are when you have a requirement to dispose of an asset at the end of its life. And so it could be you develop a piece of land, you put a building on it, but when you close it down or when you shut the site in 50 years, you're going to remove the building and you're going to remediate the land. You're going to start to now see a liability for that future obligation to actually do that remediation. Okay, this is a standard that was in other sources of accounting, and we're just starting to get it into what we call PSAS, or public sector accounting. So you're going to see an asset retirement obligation, which is that legal obligation when you have a legal obligation to do that cleanup. The initial entry for that is actually going to show an increase in the assets and an increase in the liability. But over time, that liability is going to grow towards what your expected payout will be.
Kara, would that include, say, a pumper, a fire $500,000 truck that you're replacing?
No, it doesn't include replacement costs. It would include if you have to remediate it at the end. So if you're just planning to replace an asset, the pumper gets to the end of its life and then you're just going to sell it off for scrap. That's one thing. If it gets to the end of its life and you've got to spend $30,000 to clean it up and recycle all the pieces, and then you could be into an asset retirement obligation. You're legally required at the end of the life to do X. But yeah, go ahead.
A good example for us would be asbestos in some of our older buildings, our waste sites. I'm still working through it. It's a lot of work to get this in place. A lot of work.
Yeah. It's really things that at the end of their life, are you gonna have to put out a bunch of money to actually return it or to clean it up? So we see it a lot if you had like an oil spill on a property, you may have to clean that up at the end before you sell it off or something like that. Yeah, but that's the asbestos one is fairly common. Yeah. Okay, so those are the highlights. I did provide as well a copy, and I believe Michael gave it out, just a copy of our audit report. So that's just, this is a highlight of sort of those things. Our audit report is just, I've sort of summarized the main points. But is there any question?
Any questions or comments? Nikki?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question stems around comparing our municipality to other municipalities of size and stuff in regards to what we have in reserves, our borrowing limits, and our asset management. How do we compare?
You're definitely comparable. So I wouldn't say, I'd say in terms of asset, we always talk about asset life, you're average. In terms of surplus generation, I think you're probably slightly above average. I think the costs are very well controlled here versus some other places. And I think the last few years in some municipalities, they've seen a huge amount of like development and sale. So when they've got a lot of contributed assets, they're getting a lot more property taxes. And I think they're just the booming growth. Their expenses are not keeping up with, the revenues are not keeping up with when you starting to have to put in a lot of new infrastructure. So I'd say you're probably above average in terms of actually surplus and reserves. Yeah.
Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. The first one is around the policy or the lack thereof one. What are we doing to make sure that that policy gets implemented, and how does that get looked after? And two, I had a similar question about how do we compare with other municipalities? So if you're looking at procedures and policies on how we're purchasing things, we tend to use the emergency and sole sourcing option of a procurement bylaw. It appears to be quite frequent. So I'm just curious if other municipalities are doing the same thing.
Do you want the first one?
In terms of the policy through Madam Mayor to Councillor Smith, I'd say 90% done. It's to the clerk and deputy clerk right now for review. We'll probably send it to SHRP as well for another review. So that should be implemented very shortly. The capital policy will take a lot longer. In terms of the sole sourcing, I couldn't tell you what other municipalities are doing for the most part. It's certainly different times than it has been over the last number of years. I think some municipalities are using it more than what they have before.
Yep, they are. There's just not the supply out there that you sometimes see. I would say in terms of controls around around the whole process of purchasing, I definitely see organizations or municipalities that are much larger where they have, a very onerous purchase system, but the controls are excellent because you can't get anything through it takes 2 months to get a bill paid. But for the size of the municipality here, I think the controls, especially around the expense cycle, are very good.
The question I'd have is, did I see a surplus of $334,000 that will be going into the reserves?
Your total surplus is, sorry. That's my changes. There we go. It's the annual surplus is 1.7, 1.8.
1.7 million.
1.8 million, 1.765 is the total surplus. And you started the year with 46,000 in accumulated. And so you have 48,242.
Okay.
So that's basically, if I were to take all of your assets and subtract all your liabilities, that's what you would have left over.
Okay.
Assuming the assets sold for what they're currently on the books for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. No. All right. No other questions. Thank you very much, Kara. And I have a motion Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn, that council received the presentation by MNP of the 2022 financial statements and that council approve the 2022 financial statements as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you as well for having me. And thank you so much to Michael and your team. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a prudent investor standard. We have Keith Taylor from One Investment, Jennifer Hayes, and Colin McDonald. We'll get you to come to this table as soon as we can get this organized. There are 2 microphones, so you're just going to have to share. You'll need to use the microphone or otherwise people that are on that screen won't hear us.
Thank you very much for having us. We launched the our prudent investor program at One Investment in mid 2020. The 3 of us you've announced them, Colin, Keith, and Jennifer. We'll try to make the presentation rather swift, so there's lots of time for questions and answers. Jennifer is going to do the bulk of the presentation. I'll step in to fill some gaps here and there. I am the investment expert. One Investment is a firm that's backed by 2 entities, LAS and MFOA. So we have both the municipal, well, we have lots of municipal expertise here, but my role is being the investment expert, being the chief investment officer of One Investment, and my colleagues do the municipal side, so they will help out with those type of questions. Jennifer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So today we're going to take you through the presentation that we have for municipalities as prudent investors. The contents that we're going to go through today is discussing the prudent investor regime versus the legal list regime, prudent investor through One Investment, what that looks like, and the fees applied to the program. When you're looking at the overall products from what's available to you under legal list under the Municipal Act and versus prudent investor under the Municipal Act, the legal list products about 3% of what would be available to you under the prudent investor. So it gives you greater choice, greater flexibility, and the ability to adjust to changes in the financial environment in need and the potential possibly for better returns. Overall, the difference between legal list and the prudent investor standard in the Municipal Act is under the legal list, it's individual securities that a municipality would be responsible for purchasing. The risk lays at the security level, and it's up to the municipality to ensure that they meet the governance under the Municipal Act. With the prudent investor standard, it speaks to an overall governance. It is more of a portfolio way of looking at things, and the risk is controlled at the portfolio level, and it gives broad ability for diversity.
Allow me to step in. Here we have a chart that shows we had a consultant come in and give us perform some analysis about the opportunity set under the legal list, under prudent investor, and based on the offering that we have. And on the lower axis, I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's just a high level instrument here to get the message across. Because investing under the legal list, it's a prescriptive list of investments. The opportunity set is very narrow. If you expand the opportunity set, you have the potential for higher returns. And the way that we capture it is not just make more money. We always express it in terms of risk-adjusted returns. We don't promise better results. We just hope that for the amount of that you're managing lower risk for the same amount of returns. In this particular chart here, we've actually done it the other way. On the bottom axis, we have risk and return on the horizontal axis. And in the little dotted line, just under the three different regimes based on what our consultant put together. This is the opportunity under three different regimes. And under the legal list, you have a few options, and the return potential is lower. That's the blue line. Once you open up the opportunity set to what's available under the prudent investor regime, which means investing in BBB Canadian bonds, which would be available under prudent investor, investing in lower credit quality bonds, investing in foreign equities, foreign bonds, and just a wider range of different financial instruments. Because of the diversification involved, for the same amount of risk, you're going to get just a little bit more risk. And because our offering it's oriented towards municipalities, and we know that the tolerance for risk is a little bit lower than the general population. And our offering is designed to be a lower risk opportunity set. And based on what we put together, you can see that the green line on the very top, which represents our offering, provides a little bit more return based on the analysis. And more importantly, the line doesn't extend as far off to the right, which means that we're actually trying to control the overall risk. And the whole point is we've designed this for municipalities because we know that that's appropriate and it fits their needs. I'll just pass it back to Jennifer to continue.
Thank you. Looking at prudent investor through One Investment. What is One Investment? We're a not-for-profit organization dedicated to serving the investment needs of the municipal sector. We were established in 1993 and jointly operated as a not-for-profit by LAS, which is a corporation of AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and CHUMS, a subsidiary of MFOA, the Municipal Finance Officers Association. Oversight to One Investment is provided by municipalities and investment industry experts, and currently 186 of the Ontario municipalities and boards invest with One. That's 39% of all municipalities in Ontario. Through the One governance, we have access to the prudent investor standard through pooled arrangements. As I mentioned, prudent investor does fall under the Municipal Act, but as it stands, most municipalities do not have access to it based on the level of investments that are required. However, through a pooled arrangement, prudent investor now becomes available to all municipalities. Currently, the smallest municipality that is with prudent investor has a population of just over 2,000 people in the province of Ontario. We have the full support of the JIB, the Joint Investment Board, and we operate as a municipal services board as under the Municipal Act. And we also have a team of experts to provide investor advice, anything from the investments and portfolio structure to building your investments into a capital financing strategy. A municipality's role under prudent investor is to adopt and authorize enabling bylaws to join the One JIB and to move to prudent investing, to execute the One JIB agreement, adopt an investment policy statement and update it annually, and keep One informed via the municipal client questionnaire, or we call it the MCQ, which is basically know your client, determine money not required immediately. Money not required immediately is essentially any money that the municipality does not think it is going to need in the short term or in less than 3 years, and provide annual reporting to council on results. The One JIB's role is basically oversight. It's the Municipal Services Board with full clerical functions and public meetings. They define the investment beliefs and principles, improve all the municipal investment plans, invest to meet the municipal objectives as defined in those plans. And for those municipalities without a targeted asset mix, we work to define asset mixes that for typical target outcomes that meet your needs. We recognize that not all municipalities have the capacity to address with investment. So we work closely with you for your cash flows, for your investment needs, to give you the outcome that you are looking for. We provide annual reporting to municipalities and oversight of responsibilities carried out by One Investment through the One JIB Services Agreement. Through the One JIB Services Agreement, One Investment's role through the One JIB Services Agreement advises on investments within the parameters as established by the One JIB. And this includes transitioning for municipalities, plans that incorporate existing PPNs, GICs, and your preferences for not to realize gains or losses on certain bonds. And we implement the investment plans by creating investment products, monitoring, rebalancing asset allocations within prescribed ranges, and monitoring portfolio managers, and support the One JIB with research, scheduling, and logistics. And additionally, we support the municipal staff if needed with templates, presentations, assisting with cash flows, anything. We are here to help support our municipalities. The solutions under One Investment.
I'll take over on this one. There's a fair bit in this slide. I mean, this is just more of a communication piece, but it's at the heart of what we do. What we're offering is a turnkey solution. There's a lot involved in moving into Prudent Investor. We've set up templates, we've set up processes, we help the municipal investors move into it. We help out with the bylaws that are involved that need to be passed. We have templates for the investment policy statement. It's a turnkey solution. And through this framework, this is how the communication works, so that on the municipality side, you know your stuff, and we can use this framework to translate it into investments. The treasurer knows what the reserves are and when those reserves are likely to be needed, and the purpose. And we use that as the basis to drive what we're doing with the investments. And you see, I'm not going to go through the specifics. You can read it on your own time. I don't want to go into the details. But for example, if there's a bridge that needs to be built in 10 years and you've got money set aside for it, well, if we know what the purpose and time frame involved for when the money is needed, we can take that chunk of money based on the municipal reserves that the treasurer would share with us, and we'd say, oh, well, that might be go into our 10-year target date outcome. He's telling us what the purpose is, and we put it into the appropriate little bucket. And then on our side, we have an asset allocation that's appropriate for longer term reserves. And, depending on what the reserves are, we would go through the reserves with the treasurer and basically ask about the time frame and purpose. And from that, we can figure out in aggregate how the money should be deployed. So, this is not, there is a way for the municipality to tell us what's important. And this gives us a framework to implement it in terms of an investment solution. So it's an elegant way of putting it all together. And as I say, I'm not going to go through the details here, but it gives you a sense that we have a process that's repeatable, and we know our stuff, the investment side, the treasurer knows their part. This dovetails them together.
And likewise, just to add on to that, if you had a bridge sitting out in 10 years and something happens to accelerate the need for that bridge into the midterm or to the short term, because assets tend not to go by their standard life cycle on occasion, through the annual review, the portfolio is rebalanced for each municipality. So as you can see, as you need things to adjust, it is adjusted for you. The current offerings that One Investment provide are listed in this chart below. The ones identified in red are currently only available through the Prudent Investor Program, and the One JIB New Product Committee is currently reviewing offerings and may add or modify the existing product list. The four listed in black are the ones available under legal list through One Investment. What is included in the One Investment fees? It is a single fee. There is no hidden costs. The fees are reviewed at least annually by the One Investment Board, and fees are accrued daily and paid on the funds. So municipalities never receive an invoice. So there's also fee transparency, and the fees cover basically external manager fees, operating expenses, trading costs and expenses, and excludes taxes paid by the funds. And now if there's any questions.
Okay. Lots of information. Susan,
How do the fees for the legal list compare with the fees for the prudent investor?
I mean, they're in the same ballpark. The foreign equity fund has higher fees. They're I think it's in the range of about 75 basis points. So that's a bit higher than the other products. Then again, it's more expensive to get that exposure. Do understand that we have external managers. We don't manage the money ourselves. We hire external managers, and that largely reflects the cost of hiring the manager to do the investment management. For the global equity, it's 45 basis points, which is a little bit higher than the the fixed income under the legal list. All in all, it's going to be comparable. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head. Sorry.
Just one quick thing to add is that the products that are under both the legal list and the prudent investor program, under the prudent investor program, they are all 5 basis points cheaper. So there is a discount on those products in going to prudent investor to kind of account for the fact, as Keith noted, that the global equities and the global fixed income are slightly higher cost because of the complexity of those products.
And if I may ask just one further question, thank you, Madam Mayor. How long has, maybe you addressed this at the beginning, but I was overwhelmed by all the information.
Sorry.
How long has the prudent investor standard been available? And is there any indication of how well it's doing and what its performance is?
The legislation is relatively new. We have had our joint investment board up since July. It's been investing since July 2nd, 2020. So we don't have the history, we don't have a huge history because the legislation didn't allow it before then. With some of the existing products that are available under prudent investor, they go back a bit further, but basically it's taking the investment world out of the province's hands with a prescriptive list that is, I think in one of the slides, I think Jennifer had noted that under the legal list, risk is assessed by security. And what you're corralled into under the legal list is predominantly bonds, predominantly government bonds. And if you were investing in, say, the Government of Canada bonds last year, you would have lost a lot of money. The diversification is your friend. In other slides, we would show that, typically equity and fixed income march to different drummers in times of crisis. And it's all about diversification. If you can do that in Canada, it gives you lower overall risk. If you add more different buckets in there, you get better diversification. And that's the whole point, is to give a larger opportunity set. So you're likely to get better overall returns. But, if you have a very shallow range of opportunities, yeah, you're going to get more profound outcomes. Not always good ones.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, I do have a motion. I'm going to read this, and if there's further discussions, we can go from there. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan. Whereas we are currently investing with one investment under the legal list, and whereas the prudent investor standard removes the legal list restrictions and empowers municipalities to make any investments as long as they exercise the care, skill, diligence, and judgment that a prudent investor would exercise in making such an investment. And whereas the province has put in place an elaborate governance regime that municipalities are required to follow if they choose to invest under the prudent investor standard. And whereas the treasurer is recommending option number 2 as identified in the report. Now therefore be it resolved that council approve the treasurer's recommendation to go with option 2 and receive the prudent investor standard for municipal investments report as presented through a combined effort of One Investment and MFOA, Keith Taylor from One Investment and Jennifer Hayes and Colin McDonald from MFOA. Discussion. So we can move this investment from after this presentation. All those in favor? Carried. We want to make money. So that's your job over the next year for us. Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, we are now going into a public meeting. And I have some procedures under the Planning Act that I have to read here. The Council of the Township of Central Frontenac is conducting 2 public meetings this afternoon. One under our road closure and sale policy, and the second held pursuant to a public meeting under the Planning Act. We will hold the public meeting under the Planning Act first. This meeting is with respect to application ZB 0422-Kennebec Bot for the rezoning of Frontenac vacant land condominium plan 70, level 1, units 45 and 46, Kennebec 1077 and 1083 Ash Grove Trail, Garrison Shores, from an area specific waterfront residential holding zone, which is RWX 17H, to an area and unit specific waterfront residential RWX 17 bracket U45-46 bracket to allow for the use of 2 condominium units to be developed as one development parcel, allowing only one residential dwelling between the 2 units and one detached garage as a principal use on the other unit, and to acknowledge conditions of the holding provisions and condominium documents have been addressed. I will now ask the deputy clerk to advise the method by which notice of the meeting was given and confirmation as to the date that notice was given. Cindy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can confirm that notice was posted on the site on April the 27th. Mailouts went to the appropriate buffered properties they were mailed out on May the 1st, emailed agencies and public bodies on May the 3rd, and the notice was posted on the website on May the 3rd.
Okay, thank you. Any persons who wish to receive a copy of the minutes of the public meeting, a copy of the report, or notice of the passing should indicate their full name, address, and postal code and contact numbers to Cindy Diekman, Deputy Clerk, at the contact information provided in the report. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Central Frontenac before the proposed amendment being approved or adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decisions of the Council of the Township of Central Frontenac to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The procedure for the public meeting will be as follows. The community planner will be asked to explain the purpose of the public meeting and present the planning report. The applicant will then be provided with an opportunity to discuss the proposal. I will then inquire if there are any persons present who wish to make an oral or written submission on the proposed proposal. If so, you should announce your name and state whether you support or oppose the proposal. And this will include folks that are coming in by the technology. Should there be any persons wishing to make comments or ask questions about the proposal, they will be given an opportunity to address council. The applicant will also be given an opportunity to respond to issues arising from the public comments. Please be aware that all persons wishing to address the issues should direct their comments and questions through the chair. I would also I would also note that personal information collected as a result of this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act, the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, called MFIPA, the Planning Act, and all other relevant legislation, and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All personal information as defined by MFIPA, including but not limited to names, addresses, opinions, and comments collected, will be made available for public disclosure to members of the public at the meeting through requests and through the website of the Corporation of the Township of Central Frontenac. Questions regarding the collection, use, and disclosure of this personal information may be directed to the clerk. For anyone attending virtually wishing to speak, please use the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen or *9 if you're attending by telephone. You will be notified when you've been unmuted. So if you need some help, put your hand up and Chris can help you come into the meeting. Okay. So Sonia is with us, I believe.
Madam Mayor, it'll be Jenny Capusta this evening. Sonia's on holidays.
Okay. Jenny, are you with us?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. So I assume council has all read the report. I don't have a formal presentation for this evening. As you noted, it is rezoning to permit the development of 2 units in the Garrison Shores condominium to be developed as a single lot. There will be a dwelling on one property. That property will also include the well and the septic system. And on the other property will be the garage that will service both. There'll be a single entrance that will service both properties. This has been looked at and circulated as per the notice that Cindy said. We did receive some comments from Quinte Conservation this afternoon. Cindy has those in chambers with you. They were not emailed as we did not receive them until after 2 o'clock today. They have expressed some concerns with locating the dwelling and meeting the setbacks. They noted that they went out for a site visit on Friday of last week and flagged the seasonal high water mark. They indicated that, well, I do believe development could be possible, that it would be tight, and they're requesting deferral of the bylaw at this point until a site sketch prepared by a surveyor has been submitted to confirm that a suitable building envelope can be met. The requirement for setback for buildings for the dwelling in the bylaw is 20 meters. All the plot plans submitted by the applicant to date have shown that this is able to be met. I did do a site visit to the property. I agree that that appeared to be able to be met. Again, I'm not a surveyor, so I can't accurately confirm necessarily, but it did. Everything made sense and looked good on the site compared to the plot plans when I did the site visit. Quinte, as I noted, has marked the high water mark a little bit in from the shoreline. And as the measurements were done to the shoreline / lot line, which was the understanding was the high water mark, they're concerned that the 20 meters may not be able to be met. However, they are willing to support a setback of 15 meters to the high water mark for development, as that is what they would require a minimum for them to issue a permit for this property. So there was a slight change. Initially, we were recommending that we hear public comments and pass the bylaw tonight. Based on the request of Quinte Conservation, we've amended that recommendation at this point to defer it until this can be satisfactorily addressed with that survey sketch as Quinte recommended.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant with us? And would you like to speak, Mr. Bott?
Chris, can you move him over?
Hi, Ian Bott here. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm the party interested in investing and developing at Garrison Shores. It has been quite a frustrating ordeal. It's been a year and a half of trying to jump through hoops to get D5, D5-4 studies completed. I have done a full survey of the land, which was completed at a cost to me as well. This has been completed. The watermark, the high watermark line is staked. The lot lines are all staked. And then very frustrated that within not even the 11th hour, the final hour before this meeting, I was brought this surprise that it will not be passing. So I'm back again at square one with no forward motion in developing these lands. We can meet, you can look on frontnacmaps.ca and the measurements are all there online. We can fit my proposed cottage, my proposed garage with the setbacks that are needed. And especially if we could change the zoning to allow a 3-meter setback from the roadway and the 15-meter setback from the high water mark, which the conservation wants, it would be well within ability to develop the lot as I would like.
Okay, a question for Jenny and Cindy. If we defer this tonight, can we bring it back in 2 weeks? Is that a reasonable time frame so that Mr. Bach can get on with doing what needs to be done to get a building on this lot? Is 2 weeks reasonable?
Madam Mayor, thank you. That's an excellent question. That was something that we have been looking into. One of the concerns was that if we have changed the bylaw from what was circulated, would it meet public notice requirements? We have confirmed that if council is okay with the change, it's actually up to council to determine whether you would need another public notice circulation or if we'd be able to just return this in 2 weeks to the next council meeting. So if council determines that any changes proposed would be reasonable to come back in 2 weeks without further public notice, such as changing the water body setback from 20 meters to 15, which would be supported by the Quinte Commons, that is a decision council can make on this.
Okay, is there anyone here tonight in our audience that wants to make a submission to support or not support this proposal?
I just have one here and not to the condominium people first.
Okay, Jenny, did you hear that question?
I was going to say, I'm sorry, I got only like a word or two of that. So if that could be repeated.
Yeah,
Madam Mayor, I can maybe address that. The question was why it came through to council instead of the condominium corporation first. Because it was a planning application to change the zoning, we processed the application and notified the condominium corporation as part of that notification process. I'm not familiar with the legalities in terms of what the applicant has to do in terms of satisfying the condominium corporation. That's an arrangement between the condominium owners through the declaration and agreement through the condominium corporation.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Your name, first of all? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Can I just MCC LURE?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's thought it should go to them first before anything.
Okay. Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak?
We do have Mr. Jeff Dubois. I'm going to have Chris move him over so he can speak.
Okay.
I believe I'm unmuted, Madam Chair.
Yes, you are, Jeff. We can hear you.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Hopefully the technology will sustain my comments with the blazing hot speed of 15 megabit up here in the hills. One never knows. I have a couple of concerns and questions, which I'm hoping to be answered before I can voice any opinion on whether or not I would support it. I'm wondering if the planner has been aware or is aware of the existing buffer zone within the condominium declaration itself that prevents any development along the waterfront on those lots on the north side of the lake. That would be my first question.
If I may, Madam Mayor, yes, I have reviewed the condominium agreements and the requirements for buffer zones. And that is why at this point, the suggestion was the 20-meter setback, which is what was approved through the condominium approval process. There wasn't any alteration to that suggested. This is something that has come up as a result of Quinty comments at this point.
Right. My second question would be on, my understanding is that the applicant wishes to treat the property as one unit. And I'm assuming that's for the purpose of meeting setback variances. The reality is that they are two separate deeded properties. So they are not a single legal unit. They are two separate legal units. My concern is not that he wishes to develop it as a single unit. In fact, one might easily argue that that will be preferable, given the density of the clusters when that was originally developed. There would certainly be less demand on water usage, water and septic usage. So in some respects, that would be desirable. My concern would be, if this goes through, what happens down the road? Because they are still two individual deeded properties. And once we change the zoning on the two of them to treat them as one, they're no longer divisible, or are they divisible? I would think that they could still therefore be sold as individual properties. And were that to happen, we would be going down a road that I don't believe we really intend on going, because now you've removed the holding zone and you're going to be developing two lots as two properties as opposed to two lots as a single property. So my concern is not this applicant, it's what happens when ownership gets transferred down the road. So
Okay. Jenny, can you answer that question?
I believe I can. Hopefully it's to the satisfaction. Yes, so that is definitely something that we have considered. That was one of my initial concerns as well, was what happens going forward. And we always like to try and ensure that we have proper procedures in place to ensure that in the future we don't have those issues and concerns, just like you've expressed. So at this point, what we're doing is altering the number of dwellings permitted on the property that will have the garage to 0 per the chart in the bylaw that we're varying, and permitting a dwelling on the other property. The size of the lots is likely going to limit any accessory coverage or structures on that one, because the septic system and well will be located on that property. My understanding from the applicant is that the well on the property that will service the dwelling, and that the garage will not have any plumbing fixtures or other such things that will be reliant on services that are located on the alternate property. So should council approve this bylaw, then going forward, you wouldn't be permitted to put a dwelling on that other property without a subsequent rezoning application. So say, should the property be sold that contains only the garage and somebody wanted to change that to add residential uses on it, they would have to undergo a similar rezoning process to what we're doing now. And as part of that, you would want to confirm that septic well can be met on that property as a freestanding property in compliance with the condominium agreement.
Okay. Jeff, does that satisfy your question?
yes, it certainly does. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that's online?
I know Mr. Bott did have his hand up earlier. Ian, did you have anything further that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add that I have satisfied the condominium board's requirements with the D54 study and the D55 study on the well, as well as the septic and the soil. That was for Jeff. That was.
Okay. Mr. Bott, if we bring this back in 2 weeks, does that help a little bit with having this come at the last minute and deferred tonight?
It doesn't help. I need to get, I have a builder that's excited to go and I've paid to keep him on reserve. This has been a year and a half. I am frustrated that this came last minute and nobody alerted me to this. With this being common knowledge, supposedly, that is embarrassing for Frontenac. That your deputy did not know this was a requirement. I think I deserve to be able to move forward. I would like the hold to be removed from this land, and I would like to invest in Frontenac and get building.
One of the issues is until things get circulated, you don't know what the Conservation Authority needs. It is unfortunate that it came at the last minute, but you're also going to have to get permission from the Conservation Authority prior to getting your building permit anyway. So regardless, you're going to have to jump through this hoop in order to get started to build.
Yes. Okay, I understand that. Can we apply to change the setbacks so that I can, if we do a 3-meter setback from the roadway, my lot, if you look on Frontenac maps, my lot is starts 7 meters from the roadway anyway, as it is. And then with another 7-meter setback from that rear line, there's lots of movement to still be clear from the road. If we could apply to have a 3-meter setback from the road and then install the 15-meter setback from the front of the yard, the water line, which is what the conservation wants. If that could move, that gives us something to work with, that we can actually fit the unit on this lot then.
Okay, Jenny, would that work? Would that satisfy the Conservation Authority?
It appears that it would. They, as I said, they had concerns. They had expressed that they wanted proof that that would fit on the property. In conversations with Mr. Bott to discuss their comments, he did indicate a willingness to provide that survey sketch to Quinty, should they require it at the time of his permit application. So, I mean, in theory, if we're further reducing the rear yard or the roadside to 3 meters from the 7 that was proposed initially through this, and then the 15 meters on the water side, Quinty did say they would support a reduction to 15 meters from the high water mark. So it is my opinion that that would meet their intent. However, again, I also got the comments this afternoon, so I haven't had much more time than Mr. Bott to look into this. But based on this, it probably would meet their intent.
Okay. So Philip, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the comments we heard was one of the same questions I had when reading the materials. It was around what happens in the future if Mr. Bott sells the property. We theoretically could end up with 2 overdeveloped lots. And is there any way to tie 2 condominium units together to be sold together or put on title together?
In our inquiries into this from a legal perspective, as they are condominium units, there's no way to merge them the same way they would be if they were separate lots or through a plan of subdivision, because while they're sold as units, they're all still essentially one large parcel. So they're subdivisions within the main one. As I noted, we will be changing the zoning on the one that has the garage to not permit a dwelling unit on it. So it wouldn't be allowed to be redeveloped to add any living facilities or anything like that without a subsequent rezoning, at which point planning staff would consider that proposal and what impact that may have. And it may not be something that would be supported at that time. It would depend on the proposal.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So the motion before us is for a deferral, but what I'm hearing is that this could be changed to an approval, and Mr. Bott then would have to alter his plans to do the 15-meter instead of the 20, and would have to deal directly with the Conservation Authority to get his building permit. Is that right?
Correct.
So Mr. Bott would need my understanding from Quinty is they do issue development permits for dwellings. So that would have to be satisfied before he could apply for a building permit through the township, as that is part of the applicable law. So my concern was if we didn't have an alteration to that 20 meters, that we could approve it one way, and if conservation didn't approve it. So aligning them with the same 15 meters does make sense, I think, based on that. Again, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to look through all of the documentation to make sure, but.
Okay. So what do you want to do, council? Do you want to defer it or do you want to?
Defer it.
Okay, who was that? Who said defer? Was that Jeff?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was still unmuted.
You are still live, Jeff. Mr. Middleton, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Is there no cutoff on these notices that go out that Quinny and people have to have their information back in at a certain date? Like, it just seems to me pretty ridiculous that they come this afternoon with a deferral. Like, there must be something on, like, you know, we got the package on Friday to review all long weekend to be ready for Tuesday night. But it's okay for Quinny to come at 3 o'clock on Tuesday and say, we got a bunch of new information. Like, I would think there should be a set off date at some point. And if they don't have their stuff in, then they have no issue.
Well, we do, thank you, Madam Mayor. I say, well, we do endeavor to have everything and include all of the information under the Planning Act. Comments can be provided any point up to the passing of the bylaw. So we do ask for these comments sooner, and we do try and let them know that the sooner the better. However, we cannot require them because, as I said, comments can be provided to council anytime up to the passing of the bylaw. So even after this public meeting, if we received comments, we would provide those, and they are to be taken in consideration of any approvals.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read the motion that's before us, and we can choose to defeat it and do something else if we wish. So the motion that we have before us is moved by Susan and seconded by Craig, that the council for the Township of Central Frontenac receive comments from the public at the public meeting scheduled for May 23rd, and that due to concerns received since the drafting of the planning report raised by Quinny Conservation Authority regarding the setbacks from the seasonal high water mark, the application for a zoning bylaw amendment file number ZB 0422 bought for the two parcels of land known as Frontenac Vacant Land Condominium, Plan 70, Level 1, Units 45 and 46, Geographic Township of Kennebec, 1077 and 1083 Ash Grove Trail, be deferred pending confirmation the applicant can meet the setbacks required by the conservation authorities in order that a permit for the development can be approved. Before we vote on that, is there anyone else who wants to make any comment in the public meeting? Okay, no
conservation.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? This is for deferral. All those in favor? Oppose, in favor? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is defeated. So we need another motion to approve it. Okay.
We got it right here. It's coming.
And then we'll close the public meeting. Sydney?
May I ask a question? And maybe Jenny, if we're approving the bylaw as it's presented today, I believe it does have the 20-meter setback, correct?
Yes, correct. That was going to be my question, Madam Mayor. Also, is as submitted, we have a rear yard of 7 meters and a front yard of 20. So council would have to determine, would they like to move forward as submitted, or would they like to make changes to those yards as proposed by Mr. Bott?
I think the wise thing to do would be to amend that to the 15 meters that Mr. Bott agreed to and that Quinty wants. Otherwise, we're just setting it up to not work out once he goes to apply for a permit. Mr. Bott, you can make that 15 meters?
I can make that 15 meters. Could we set the roadway clearance to a 3 meter as well? From the
Jenny?
current 7 meters?
That would be up to council. We had amended it from to 7, as that is the standard road setback. That was because the way the bylaw is written, he actually needed to have 20 meters from the road and 20 meters from the water, and his lot's not 40 meters deep. So he had amended the roadside to the standard 7 meters. If council would like to reduce that to 3 meters, then Mr. Bott has more space to move the house closer to the road, which would increase the chances of meeting the water body setback.
Okay, I'm seeing some nods around the table. We're okay with that? So 3 meters from the road and 15 meters from the high water mark. Okay,
Okay, I don't know which one is.
Go
the
ahead, Craig.
attachment.
So with no disrespect, or sorry, through Madam Mayor, no disrespect to Mr. Bott, but you're kind of pulling a Quinny conservation stunt here yourself by coming in here at the last minute wanting to go 3 meters away from 7 meters. So I guess my question is, I'm reading between the lines, is this home or mobile unit or something you're bringing in, will it fit in the distance of 15 meters from the high water line and already the 7 meter that you've applied to from the 20, or does that not give you enough room?
As far as the high water mark that the survey company from Kingston did, it'll fit in there. Because there's no, but I haven't been back in town to visualize what the conservation has designated as the high water mark. It says their note to Jenny said that it was a few meters in from the current lot line, or a little ways in, right? It didn't state meters, it only stated a little ways in, but my drawing right now that I have submitted, I can fit an A-frame cottage on the current lot with room to spare from what I was working with off of the Frontenac Township.ca maps, or frontenacmax.ca. And then on the secondary lot, put a 2-door garage. And that would fit easy, and it fits in great with the topography and with and preserving what nature and trees are there. It would fit in perfect. Now I haven't seen what new stakes were put on. Jenny's got something to say, but yeah, as far as with and I'm sorry that this is a last minute, I am just as frustrated that I expected to be moving ahead and had full intentions to be actually digging ground later on in the week, and then come to this, that nothing can be done again because now we've got new information on the table as of the last hour before the meeting. I understand your frustration because I am just as frustrated.
Okay, I have a new motion. First of all, Lynn?
Madam Mayor, before you read that, I just wanted to let you know that there is another member of the public who has their hand up, Diana Meeks. Do you want to move her over?
On this one? First of all, okay, go ahead, Diana.
That was an error. I don't want to just, participate in this one. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Lynn, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just wondered what the opinion was from Jenny on the 3 meter setback from the road, because having not seen it, that seems quite close to the road.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate that, Lynn. That was actually the comment I was going to make, was that prior to this, Mr. Bott and the plot plan submitted did indicate he'd be able to meet both the 20 and the 7 meter for the dwelling. So a reduction from that 7 to the 3 is something that planning staff has not reviewed at this point. So I can't really speak to that reduction. Perhaps a compromise could be 15 and 7, because that is what Quinty was suggested, and 7 was what planning staff have reviewed. I haven't had a chance to look at that 3-meter setback.
Okay, so Ian, can you live with 7 meters from the road?
Sure, I can, but there is a trailer that was parked. I am already, the lot starts 7 meters from the road already. And then there was a trailer that was within 5 meters already on the roadside there that shows on Frontenac maps. That trailer has been cleaned up and removed because I know that's Frontenac would like trailer, like that was part of the deal to clean up the old trailers and clean up the garbage on the lots too. But 7 and 15, I can work with that.
Okay, that's great, because I'm going to read this motion unless there's someone else that wants to speak. Nobody's saying they want to speak. Moved by Craig, seconded by Danny Meeks, that the Council for the Township of Central Frontenac receive comments from the public at the public meeting scheduled for May 23rd, and if no concerns are raised that require further review by staff, that the following motion be presented to council later during the regular meeting. That the application for a zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZB 0422 bought for the 2 parcels of land known as Frontenac Vacant Land Condominium, Plan 70, Level 1, Units 45 and 46, Geographic Township, Kennebec, 1077 and 1083 Ash Grove Trail be approved, and that zoning bylaw number 2011-52 of the Township of Central Frontenac as amended be further amended as per Quinty Conservation to be 15 meters from the high water mark and 7 meters from the road, which is the rear lot line. Bylaw and schedule to amend zoning bylaw number 2011-52 included with this report, and that council determines that in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice is required prior to the passage of the bylaw, and that the amending bylaw be presented to council for all 3 readings. So those are the numbers 15 and 7. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Any opposed? Motion's carried. There we go. Took a little time, but we think we've got it resolved.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. The public meeting is now concluded. I would remind any person wishing to receive additional information to provide their full name and address, postal code, and contact numbers to Cindy Dickman, Deputy Clerk, to the email address or phone number in the report. Okay. So we have one more. We have a road closure. And this is Rickards and Pyle. So motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy Kelsey that council receive input from the public meeting and the accompanying report prepared by the deputy clerk. And further, that subject to the comments received at the public meeting, council approved the recommendation to stop up and close a section of the unopened road allowance between concession 10 and 11 Olden, lying north of McAllen Lane, said sections to be described by reference plan. And further, that staff are authorized to proceed with the next steps to obtain an appraisal of the land once the reference plan is complete, and bring back a bylaw to council to stop up, close, and convey the said road allowance to the relevant adjoining lot owners. As an addition, subject to any easements as may be required by Hydro One Networks, Inc., said bylaw to indicate that all costs relating to the registration of the bylaw and transfer documents on title be at the property owner's expense. Cindy, any further comments received from anyone?
So since I wrote the report, there was a submission submitted by Mr. Grodkov. He was the gentleman who initially had the license agreement to use that road allowance. This started with the previous council, so you may not be as familiar with the early history of this, but originally Mr. Grodkov wanted to be able to use the road allowance in order to obtain vehicle access to a water access only lot. As it turned out, where the road allowance was and where the lake kind of cuts into the road allowance, there's some topography issues. And Mr. Grodkov was not able to meet the requirements set out in the license agreement. The previous council revoked the license agreement, and last, I think it was October, council passed the section 35 bylaw restricting the public access on that section of right of way due to the safety issues with respect to the steep slopes and the fact that the road wasn't brought up to sort of the private lane standards required in the license agreement. Mr. Grodkov has issued the comments. They were included in your package, and I just wanted to make council aware that those were included. My report indicated that no comments had been received, but those ones did come in after my report was written, but in time to get into the package. I don't know if anyone has any questions or had a chance to read his comments, but just wanted to alert folks that they were there.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Oh, Madam Mayor, just because there's some members of the public here as
Okay.
well that might want to
Right,
speak.
okay. So is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this or online?
If there is anyone online wanting to speak, you can use the raise hand feature. Oh, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay, all right. All right, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay. Okay, we are now at deferred items. This is speed limit change on the Arden Road. Moved by Susan and seconded by Lynn, that the bylaw to affect the speed limit change on a section of Arden Road be deferred to the June 13th council meeting due to additional information being received, which will require a staff report recommendation to come forward prior to considering the bylaw. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And Tyson will be at the next meeting. It's roads. Correct. Okay. Moved by Cindy and seconded by Susan, that the report outlining options regarding the parking obstruction on Road 38 be deferred to the June 13th, 2023 council meeting so that the manager of public works can assist the manager of emergency services in preparing a report and be present at the meeting to answer questions of council. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, staff reports.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Hi, this is Diana Meeks. Before you get into staff reports, did you wish to speak about my my road closure? I didn't know if you wanted me to be here while staff is being discussed.
It's quite a ways down on the agenda, Diana.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know.
It probably, yeah, it's at the bylaws, right?
No, it's at the administration.
Sorry. Yeah,
Number
12. Okay. So yeah, probably 20 minutes. You could have time for a cup of coffee.
Okay, I just wanted to, if I should hear what you're going to say or not. Okay, thanks.
You can always listen. Okay, we have a motion moved by Susan and seconded by Cindy that council received the check distribution reports totaling $1,506,114.48 as prepared by the treasurer for information. It's a mouthful of dollars. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Lynn, seconded by Cindy, that council approve the following apportionment of assessments as recommended by impact for 2022 and 2023 as applicable for the following roll numbers. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them there. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Lynn, seconded by Cindy, that council received for information. Oh, sorry, we are in fire. Moving right along here. Chris is right there. He can. Okay, moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy, that council received for information the CFFR report dated May 23rd, 2023. Questions or comments of Chris? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we need a seconder on that one again. My right-hand person always gets those jobs. Okay. Motion moved by Bill and seconded by Dan that council receive the fire department radio system improvements report for information. And further that the manager of fire and emergency services be authorized to utilize the single source provisions of the township's procurement policy regarding the department's radio system improvements project. And that the manager of fire and emergency services / fire chief, the treasurer and chief administrative officer recommends option 3 to purchase all required equipment from Bearcom in 2023 in the amount of $480,790 plus HST. And that the purchase will be offset by the $78,600 currently in the 2023 budget and pull $414,936 from reserves, which shall be paid back over 4 years at $103,734 per year, saving interest money by borrowing from ourselves. And that council approve the recommendation of staff and purchase the equipment from Bearcom Communication and authorize the mayor and CAO to sign the lease purchase contract procuring the subject radio system improvements. And further that the fire chief and CAO be authorized to issue a purchase order to Bearcom Communications. Discussion. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I would like to request a recorded vote on this. We haven't had one this meeting yet.
There you go.
Second of all, no disrespect, Chief. I understand safety is very important, and we are getting by with the system we have. In your report, you said in January you identified this problem. You didn't bring it to budget at that time. I would be happy to defer this motion to budget this fall when we sit down and we look at it for next year. We only have 3 million left in reserves, taking 400 and some thousand, so close to $500,000 out. We're not being, as a council, being fiscally responsible to our residents. Like if any emergency came along, we're at our borrowing limit. We just don't have the money. And to be kind of, you had brought it up during the fire master plan experience, and when we talked about that, it's really hard as a council to approve a large sum like that out of budget time. So I'd only be in favor of this if we deferred it to budget and we look at it for taking it out of next year. I just can't support doing this time. It's not about safety for me. I do feel strongly that everybody needs to be protected, but money wise, we have to protect our residents.
Okay, Mr. Treasurer.
If I may respond, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, it was actually myself who put that in there as an option to council. I know the optics aren't good of pulling from reserves, and we just had a prudent investor report that council approved going to the next step at, so it would take potential interest revenue away from that. The safety was one of my concerns, the fire chief, so I just didn't want council to think that was the fire chief who recommended that. That was myself. He had the option in there for the 7-year lease, which I don't like paying $120,000 interest. And this other one, we could do it over 7 years, but my question was, what jeopardy does that put our residents and our volunteer firefighters in that we, you know, that was my concern. So that's why I thought the third option at least gives council another choice.
Okay. Craig.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. To Michael, the 7-year lease, didn't that total $504,297 in the chart you sent us, or did I read that wrong? I thought the 5-year rental was 114,000 more, but the 7-year lease was only a difference of $15,045 in the chart you sent.
Oh, thank you. To Madam Mayor, through Madam Mayor, Councillor Middleton, it is a 5-year lease that's $112,000 more. Sorry, the 7 years is $15,000 more. and I'm trying to remember exactly why, the HST that we get back, I think, it spreads it out over the 7 years if we budget 80,000 per year.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to be straight, the 7-year plan's a difference of $15,000 and $45 as opposed to outright buying it today and pulling 400,000 from reserves. So when the investor guys were here, we should ask them if we invested $400,000 over 7 years. I really hope that they're going to get us $15,000 return.
Hey, there we go. That's why I recommended the third choice, so we could get it in right away. Yes, there's only a $15,000 difference if we spread it out over 7 years. What potential liability lawsuits could come in over those 7 years? I get quite concerned at that, and that's why I gave that third option. If budget wise, it's nice to go 80,000 over 7 years. Absolutely. Again, it's just an option.
Okay, Bill, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now it's a totally different question. If we pay for it up front now, borrowing it from ourselves, really, we're only using $103,000 this year. Yeah, the reserves are gone, but we can go to the budget next year for the additional.
To put that 103 back in next year and the year after that till it's paid.
Oh.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor to Councillor Everett. Yes, over the next 4 years, 5 years, it was going to be paid back at $103,000. And that's why I used the word shall. That is my only concern that has happened in the past where that money has not been paid back to reserves. That's again why I used the word shall.
And just to add a comment, over the next 7 years, we're going to be having some major expenditures, like big fire trucks that are going to cost us, instead of 400,000, probably 600,000 or 700,000. The prices aren't going down. So whether you spread it over 7 or 5 or 4 to do it this way. Philip.
So I kind of like Nikki's suggestion of deferring this until budget this fall or next spring. We now at least know what the cost is. It can be appropriately accounted for. That would be my option at this time.
Okay. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That would depend on the chief's life expectancy of his equipment too, which we don't know.
Okay. Susan.
Just a question in terms of the estimate that you have. If we wait until the budget in the fall, is that still going to be a valid estimate, or are we going to be looking at more money?
Oh, sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Irwin. I can't really say that that it would be. It may be up somewhat. I was asked to give an option of a 7-year plan. That's what I brought back to council. That was at the fire master plan meeting. We did budget for 78,000 approval for over the 5-year period. So I did take council's direction on this. If they want to wait, that's up to you. Councillor Everett is correct that our system is antiquated. It is very hard to get parts. Just a battery for a portable radio is like $100 now. So you're looking at a new system. If you at least start with the radios, at least you're getting somewhere to get that, initial step. There may be some money from the Derico funding that might be able to help us out as well. But I'm only bringing this report to you to make you aware that this system needs to be looked at sooner than later. Our licensing and everything else, we have to get that in order as well. And our equipment, we can do an assessment on it and see what it is, but I've been told that it's quite old.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, you talked about the sole procurement and why you liked Bearcom, but just a question, if you would have went to RFP and priced it out, do you think there would have been much of a difference in price?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Gowdy. No, I don't think, I have a very good relationship with Bearcom. They've done great work for me in the past. They're a very reliable company, and there's a lot of municipalities that have used them. They're a large company, and they're very good with their service record as well. That's another big part, the 24/7 servicing, which they offer.
And a follow-up, we know you have to get the licensing in place and that, it's not going to happen overnight. So if you were to get the licensing in place and do your good in inventory of your equipment and stuff, if we did budget in October, you would be in a better position possibly to know exactly what you need.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, I've already started the process of getting the licensing. We can't go without licensing. So right now, what you're doing, you're paying for licensing that isn't owned by this municipality. So that licensing, Industry Canada could give that away to somebody else right away and you wouldn't have anything. So I already put that in the works. We're already getting that. It's not a big fee. It's not really super expensive, but it needs to be in place.
I'm not disagreeing with the licensing because you had said you had to put it in place and you budgeted for that. So I'm not disagreeing with the licensing. I'm just worried about the purchase of the equipment. So if you get the licensing, like you're starting to do the steps. So by the time budgeting comes around, is my point that we can look at it better, because you had already said you're looking for a fire truck next year as well. So we just have to be responsible to the residents, like your chain of command. We have a chain of command, and our chain of command is the residents are the ones that we have to be responsible to.
Okay, so the motion that I've just read is that we purchase and pay back over 4 years. So, and we ask for a recorded vote. Okay, all those in favor? No, all those in favor. We're going to start with Philip Smith. Danny. Nikki. Craig.
No.
Susan. Bill.
Yeah.
Lynn. Cindy. Fran, yes. Motion is defeated. So are there any other options you want to consider? The 7-year lease, or do you want to just leave it till October and hope the radios don't go out and we have firemen in trouble?
Actually, Madam Mayor,
yes,
I'd like to change my vote if I can.
It's not going to matter, but I can change it.
And the reason I'm changing it is simply because I am concerned about the safety of our firefighters. And if my house was burning, I'd want you folks to be able to communicate. And we have a responsibility to our taxpayers to be fiscally responsible, but we also have a responsibility to protect our taxpayers, which is why I'm changing my vote.
Okay. Still defeated. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So maybe since we did approve in the capital for the 78,000, why wouldn't we consider at least using that and getting started?
With a lease.
In the fall, we'll go ahead with looking at the bigger picture. That's my suggestion. I would recommend that.
So the 78,000 would be used for?
I would probably purchase the radios themselves, just so we've got that upgraded radio system started, and maybe the Derico funding, maybe the antenna that we were talking about for the Parham to reach the outlying areas that might help us.
Do we need a motion for that? It's in the budget. It's in the budget, so go ahead. Yeah.
Are we
right.
okay with that?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's see. We are at summary administration of planning. Anybody want a 10-minute break or 5-minute bathroom break? Okay. We're taking a break for 10 minutes. Okay, the cookies were great and should get us through the next hour. Okay, we left off at E, administration planning. And it's the summary of the Provincial Policy Statement and Planning Act. Cindy, there's no presentation with that?
We do have Dimitri here from the county to answer any questions or to provide a summary.
Okay. So let me read the motion first and then we'll talk about it. Okay, moved by Bill and seconded by Danny that the report summary of proposed changes to the Provincial Policy Statement and Planning Act prepared by Dimitri be received for information. So there are some basic things that will apply to us. Dimitri, do you want to just give us a short overview of what affects us the most here in Central Frontenac?
Sure, Madam Mayor, that's not a problem. So on April 6th, the province announced its latest policy and legislative initiative as part of the Housing Supply Action Plan. And that action plan in this case is going to be replacing the provincial policy statement, as well as amending the Planning Act through Bill 97. So just as a way of background, the provincial policy statement is a comprehensive land use planning policy that the province sets out. And every planning decision that a municipality makes, any zoning bylaw, any official plan that the municipality passes, must conform to the provincial policy statement. So the provincial policy statement essentially forms the bare minimum consideration that a municipality must have, or council or any committee must have, when it comes to land use matters in the province. There are some significant changes to this document. However, a lot of this is geared more towards a larger, faster growing urban municipalities, or so as defined by the province of Ontario. And a lot of these changes are actually not going to be relevant or significantly impact the township of Central Frontenac. There are some changes that you should be aware of, however, and so I'll just quickly go over them now. But the one major change is that the provincial policy statement is no longer going to be called the provincial policy statement. It is now going to be titled the provincial planning statement. So different name, same acronym, and generally the same structure as far as the themes of the policy considerations. Now, one of the major changes in the wording of the document will speak to the impact on settlement area expansion. In short, settlement area expansion in the township of Central Frontenac would actually now be easier and probably more adaptable to market conditions rather, not marketing, than the previous rendition of the provincial policy statement. So prior to the changes and in the current PPS, in order for a municipality to expand their settlement boundaries, they had to go through what's called a municipal comprehensive review, or an MCR for short. And what that is it essentially is a process where a lot of different policy documents on various levels of government are reviewed to make sure that employment projections, intensification targets, infrastructure improvements, and other factors that are associated with growth planning were considered before an expansion to a settlement area was undertaken. This concept has now been removed, and basically there are only two policy implications, or two policies that need to be considered when thinking for settlement area expansion, and that includes if there is sufficient capacity in infrastructure and public service facilities to support the expansion of new settlement areas, and ensuring that impacts on agricultural land and operations are minimized. Now, the language in these policies have been changed from shall to should. So the language is much weaker, but we feel that it's going to provide a little bit more flexibility as far as market conditions and what settlement area expansion may look like in the future. The one glaring change in the PPS is the fact that the natural heritage section, or the section that deals with how a municipality must look at development in the context of its impact on natural heritage features being wetlands, water bodies, rivers, has actually not been included in this rendition of the provincial planning statement. So right now we have a policy that is proposed to be changed, proposed to be completely revamped. However, we don't know what the natural heritage section is going to look like in the future. We don't know what it looks like right now. When looking at the PPS as it's been proposed by the ministry, the entire natural heritage section is omitted, and it basically says that all these natural heritage policies are under consideration and they will be brought forward to public consultation at a different time. We don't know whether these policies are going to be revised or drafted before this new PPS comes into effect, but it's something that we'll need to consider and look at once these changes are made. Should the government come forward with new natural heritage policies, that is going to be a separate report that we will prepare and then bring forward to this council, possibly with a recommendation for a response to the public consultation period if we feel that the changes are significant enough to warrant that. The other aspect of the changes brought forward to the planning framework was respect to the changes to the Planning Act through Bill 97. And one of the major changes is to reinstate site plan control for residential developments or 10 or fewer units within a prescribed area. That was removed by Bill 23. So I'm not sure if you can recall, but earlier on in the year, the ministry announced amendments to the Planning Act through Bill 23. And one of those amendments was to remove site plan control from any residential development that contained 10 or fewer units. Now, what site plan control is it's a land use planning tool that exists to reduce conflict between proposed uses and nearby properties, as well as ensuring things where large developments carefully consider things like vegetation retention, parking locations, snow storage, landscaping, and ensuring that developments will not have a major impact on the shoreline of a water body. So Bill 23 had removed site plan control. Bill 97 is bringing it back, but only to prescribed areas. One of those prescribed areas being within 120 meters or about 395 feet of a water body. The commenting period for this was very quick. It had a very quick turnaround. So unfortunately, the time has expired. It closed on May 21st, but I will advise that both the Township of North Frontenac, as well as the County of Frontenac, did respond to this change, and they were generally in support of bringing back site plan control for residential developments on water bodies, because it is a good method to manage larger developments to make sure it doesn't have impact on the important assets of the township, being the lakes. The other change was respect to the effective date for planning application fee refunds. That was originally required by Bill 109, and that is something that Sonia had brought forward to council. When Sonia had brought it forward, their effective date was not yet in place. It was, but it was suspended for a time. But now Bill 97 is actually adding a date, that date being July 1st, 2023. So as of July 1st, 2023, there are specific types of applications that the municipality must refund the fees for if a decision is not made within the appropriate time frame. The other major issue that may have, or change that may have an impact on the township, although these have not yet been implemented in the township, is with respect to ministerial zoning orders, also known as MZOs. But essentially, Bill 97 has given the minister more powers to make regulations and other orders related to planning functions that would have been previously directed by local municipalities. And this could include restrictions, limits, or conditions that on the powers of municipalities to regulate the demolition and conversion of residential rental properties, certain prescribed requirements that are contained in their bylaws, prescribing of conditions that might be included as requirements of obtaining a permit, and prescribing requirements that the municipalities must impose on owners of lands. Now, as I mentioned, MZOs have not yet been used in the township, but if they are to be used in the future, the minister will have more powers associated with them than they did prior to this bill coming into effect. So I think those are really the major changes that I wanted to highlight for you. Again, they're not as significant as some of the changes that are going to be experienced by larger municipalities that have services, as well as intensification targets to consider, or municipalities with a significant amount of prime agricultural areas that may be impacted by this bill. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Once we start working with it, a lot of it will make a lot more sense as well. All right, all those in favor of the motion that I read? Carried. Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you. Have a good night.
One thing about government, always change. All right, we are at strategic plan. Moved by Danny, seconded by Bill. Whereas the existing strategic plan for the municipality had a planning horizon of 2017 to 2020. And whereas North Frontenac Township is also looking to update its strategic plan, and the CAO clerks and treasurers from both municipalities are proposing a joint RFP with the intent to realize some cost savings through economies of scale and shared travel and other costs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive the joint RFP for strategic plan report for information and authorize the CAO clerk and treasurer to work with the Township of North Frontenac in developing shared terms of reference for a joint request for proposal. Discussion? Makes good sense. All those in favor? Carried. Kathy, are you hoping to start that sort of mid-year?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we are.
After summer, right?
Yes.
Mid-fall.
Fall.
All right. Moved by Dan and seconded by Bill that council receive the report options and costing relating to changing committee of adjustment and council meetings to 6 p.m. and that regular council and committee of adjustment meetings start times remain at 4 p.m. Discussion. Sorry. Who wants to start? Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
So as you know, I brought forth this motion, and my reason for the motion is I've had several people come to me. They want more diversity. They want to be able to come to meetings, interact with council personally. So I'm doing what I feel is best for the community. We can't get people to run in elections because the only ones that are allowed, well, the only ones that can run are either seniors or people with really flexible work schedules at work. So it'd be nice to be able to have people who have a job to be able to come to meetings and maybe run for council and so forth. So that's the reason I brought it forth. I know the costing, we have the costing, but I really feel, I know, so committee of adjustments was at 4 during COVID, but it was always at 6 before COVID. So I just wondered, what's the difference? Like, how much have we saved since we went to 4 o'clock from 6 o'clock? Is there a cost analysis for that? Like, how much money have we saved by doing it by 4? That's one of my questions, but I'll let everybody speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Nikki.
I'll just repeat what I said last time, like, it's about equity, like those 3 terms, equity, diversity, and inclusivity are the key terms that are being thrown out there by every level of government. And maybe it's time that we just start looking into those a bit too.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I just want to say that, and I've said this before, anybody who wants to put their hat in the ring for this job knows what the hours are. And we had a good slate of officers candidates last time. So I don't think 4 o'clock was an issue. Otherwise, you folks wouldn't be here. I just think as time goes on, people get tired. When you start a meeting at 7 o'clock and it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, you're not thinking the same way you are at 5 o'clock. I think we need to consider staff in this more so than ourselves. We've got staff that don't live here. So they're going to be sitting in the office from 4:30 until 7 o'clock to start a meeting. They're not going to do it for free. And even if we can afford to pay the extra money, is it fair to ask staff to do that? You may be looking for a lot of new staff if you start changing the time that they're going to have to sit around twiddling their thumbs, waiting to come to a council meeting that then is going to take them home with their families at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So I will be voting to support that it remains at 4 p.m. for those very reasons. Anyone else? Philip.
There was a lot of talk about overtime and staff, but I don't think anybody on council actually said, no, we expect you to put in your 8-hour day and then stay until 6 o'clock. So I mean, there was some comments about staggering the times. So I still think that's a reasonable expectation. If we do move to 6 o'clock, that staff can juggle their day to accommodate the extra hours that we have to add at the end.
Lynn.
Thank you. Was it ever considered to just try moving just the committee of adjustment, not all meetings, but doing a hybrid version of that so that we saw if that got more people coming out, if the committee of adjustment moved to 6 o'clock?
Committee of adjustment should typically only get the people that are applying for a variance or a severance. And now most of committee of adjustment is done through Zoom, in that those applicants come in by Zoom. But the reason we had it before at 6 was so that people could travel to get here. A lot of these folks may be living in Toronto or Ottawa that are having the committee of adjustment deal with their issues. But now with Zoom, it's pretty easy for them. Oh, your computer's time. Okay. Okay, so as the motion reads that council received the report, options and costing relating changing committee of adjustment and council to 6 p.m. and that regular council and committee of adjustment meeting start times remain at 4. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. That it remain at 4 p.m. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that it changed to 6. Oh, sorry. We've got to defeat this. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's defeated. All right. So what's the next motion? To move it to 6.
Yeah, they basically, that's what it's basically
Is
saying.
that what that
It remains at
means?
4. Yeah, from what I can understand from, for the resolution is that the changing to meetings to 6 p.m. and that we suggested it started to, you defeated it for 4 o'clock. So it sounds to me that they are going to be at 6.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, just to let you know, committee of adjustment notices for the June meeting have already gone out at 4 o'clock, so we won't be able to change that time.
Okay, I suggest we start our next council meeting in June at the 6 o'clock time. This is the last one in May, right? So yeah, June. Okay, so we'll have to make notices of all that. So I hope you get a good supper before you come. All right. Sure.
So if this doesn't work out and people feel there's no reason why someone can't bring back a motion in 6 months' time to have it changed back, I think.
Takes 2/3 of a majority to bring it back.
But maybe everybody will hate it. And I'm just giving people the option that if they want to bring it back, the naysayers.
Okay, yep. All right, let's move on. We've got a lot to do. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip, that council received the Economic Development Committee terms of reference and committee member composition report for information. And further, that council confirm and approve the submitted terms of reference and committee membership as submitted by the committees. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. All right. Now, Diana, are you still with us? Chris, is Diana still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes,
Okay.
I'm still here.
All right, good. I'm going to read the motion. Moved by Philip, seconded by Nikki. Whereas council had previously agreed in principle to proceed with road closure conveyances for two applicants, Diana Meeks and Julie Drucker. And whereas the reference plans and appraisals have now been completed for both road closure applications and staff wish to bring the bylaws to council for approval. Now therefore be it resolved that council receive the report entitled Road Closure Bylaws, Meeks Drucker for information and consider passing the proposed bylaws later in the meeting. And both Julie and Diana are here if you have any questions. No questions? All those in favor? Carried. Motion is carried. So the next will be the bylaws to make it law. Right. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip that the minutes of the District 1 Rec Committee held April 17th, 2023 be received for information. Discussion? Anything to report from District 1? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that the minutes of the District 2 Recreation Committee meeting held April 2nd, 2023 be received for information. Anything to report from District 2? Oh, go ahead.
I think we already talked about that part of it anyway, so,
Okay.
but anyway, we're all
Good euchre game last night.
yeah, we got a very good tournament.
All those in favor? Carried. My voice is slowly leaving me here. Hey. Oh, need a mover there. Oh, that went that way. Hey, you guys, you're testing me here. Moved by Dan and seconded by Philip that the draft minutes from the District 3 Rec Committee meeting held May 7th, 2023 be received for information. Anything from District 3? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Moved by Philip and seconded by Craig that the minutes of the Economic Development Committee meeting held April the 5th, 2023, and the notes from the visit to Charlotte Lake Provincial Park held April 26, 2023 be received for information. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Whoops. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip that the minutes of the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance Board meeting held April 13th, 2023 be received for information. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Philip and seconded by Nikki that the minutes of the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority Board meeting held March 23rd, 2023 be received for information. All those in favor? Carried. I want to propose that we put all of the Recreation Committee minutes together and all of the conservation authorities together. And I will be very methodical to see if each person has anything to add to their reports, instead of us having 6 motions or 8 motions. Agreeable? All right. So noted, Cindy. All right, moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that the following correspondence be received and filed. And there are 2 pages, 34 correspondence. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Somebody keeps busy just opening mail. All right, moved by Philip and seconded by Nikki, that council supports the Charlotte Lake Family Health Team's proposal for funding and expansion of the Charlotte Lake Family Health Team service at Tay River Health Center and directs the CAO clerk to send a letter of support to the Charlotte Lake Family Health Team for this initiative. Philip.
So I support the initiative, but I just don't understand why the municipality has to support their efforts.
Go ahead, Susan.
So the Ministry of Health has announced $30 million for the entire province and for people to submit expressions of interest for developing family health teams. And one of the requirements is support from council, from social service agencies, health service agencies. So we have been active in doing that. And the Tay River doctors and our executive director are probably right now speaking at the Perth Council for their support. I would just like to say that the expansion will not affect services at the Sharbot Lake Family Health Team in Sharbot Lake. Same programs, same people. The expansion to Tay River, however, will help us because the doctors are in affiliation and they have 9 doctors now and a nurse practitioner. We have 2 doctors, one of whom wishes to retire. And we have challenges recruiting. So the larger the group, and because they have a hospital in Perth, they're more attractive to residents, and that's a potential pool for a physician. The family health team will be offering programs in Perth. Many of those programs, or some of those programs, will be open to Sharbot Lake or Central Frontenac residents, and vice versa. But they are proposing to, we are proposing an after hours program when the emergency is very busy. That will certainly help our patients. And it will also, the expansion, because it will be a much larger team, will provide supports for our staff. And so family health teams employ nurses, dietitians, our nurse practitioner, and I'm sure our nurse practitioner would love to be able to converse with another nurse practitioner in the area. One of the big benefits for us is that the Tay River physicians work at the Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital. Our patient records are electronic medical records. With the expansion, will be shared with the Tay River physicians. So if they see a resident from this community at the hospital, they will be able to access our records. So imagine a dementia patient from this area being seen in the Perth hospital by a physician with no access to your records because it's not universal. And so already, because of the improved relationship or the relationship between the Tay River doctors and Dr. Bell and Dr. Koenig, there's that sharing of information. So this is just one more step. If we get the funding, we do the expansion. If not, well, we still have established that relationship with Tay River. So.
And just to add to that, we had a public meeting here and we probably had about 40 people out and a very supportive group, and the Perth docs came up and Dr. Bell and Koenig were here as well. And our guys actually went to Tay River as well to do the open house there. So it's a good collaboration. Yes, go ahead.
I think it would be great if we do get the funding. And for instance, for my mother, who had to, instead of waiting at Perth Emerge to have antibiotics, intravenously, she went through the home care at the Tay River there, and they were excellent because they're work 7 days a week, weekends and everything. So it made it so much easier because, of course, the elderly folks, they can't be trucking all the time and spend 6 hours in Emerge. It just tires them out. So I hope it goes well.
And if we don't get it on the first application, we'll be making a second and a third until we get it. Ministry of Health, hear us. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, carried. All right. Where are we at now? Moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip. Whereas the Township of Central Frontenac remains concerned with the financial hardships to municipalities as a result of Bill 23, which changes how development charges, parkland dedication, and community benefits charges are applied in certain new projects. And whereas the municipality, due to its limited tax base, continues to experience budgetary strain on providing and maintaining existing infrastructure while struggling to fund future infrastructure. And whereas the treasurer wishes to share a letter from MFOA/AMO to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding the impacts on Bill 23, which clarifies the reality of financial hardship and advocates on behalf of all municipalities for additional revenue options. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receives the letter dated March 30th, 2023 from MFOA and AMO and confirms its agreement with the position set forth in the letter. And further, that the municipality is supportive of the recommendations to the province to consider the ability for municipalities to fund the ongoing maintenance to existing and future infrastructure, including unlocking new revenue tools. And thanks to MFOA and AMO for working on behalf of all municipalities in Ontario. MFOA is Municipal Finance Officers Association. It's a mouthful. Discussion, all those in favor? Carried. And I believe, Michael, you sit on that board if I'm, yes, and have for a few years. Okay. Oh, somehow we've missed a lot of motion. There's too many motions. Council are only signing one spot.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Okay, we have a motion moved by Bill and seconded by Philip. That bylaw 2023-25 being a bylaw to permanently close, declare surplus and sell part of a highway, Meeks be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 23rd day of May 2023. Discussion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay. Motion moved by Bill and seconded by Danny that bylaw 2023-26 being a bylaw to require removal of fence on road allowance between lots 25 and 26 concession for Hinchlebrook be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 23rd day of May 2023. Discussion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Dan, seconded by Bill, that bylaw 2023-27 being a bylaw to permanently close, declare surplus and sell part of a highway, Drucker be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 23rd day of May 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Right. Bylaws moved by Dan and seconded by Bill that bylaw 2023-28 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2011-52 as amended. Zone change from an area specific waterfront residential RW times 17-H zone with a holding symbol to an area and unit specific waterfront residential RW-X17 U45-46 zone bought be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 23rd day of May 2023. Cindy?
And just to clarify that bylaw will be amended to deal with the issues we discussed at the public meeting with the 15 meters.
That's in the bylaw, right? Those numbers?
The draft that was in the package has the original setbacks.
Right. Okay.
So it will be amended.
So as amended. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor? Carried. It's so hard in spring when people start wanting to build stuff and delays are not easy for them. All right, moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip, that council resolve into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, section 239(2)(f) regarding heritage roads, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, 239(2)(b), personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, section 239(2)(b). And again,
That's it.
that's it.
That's the three of them.
Okay, that's in there.
Those
Oh,
motions.
I'm sorry, we did. Sorry. Okay.
Madam Mayor, before you proceed, I do notice Diana Meeks has her hand up. I don't know if she has a question or if you want to entertain a question from her.
Okay. Diane, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the council's time and your time, Madam Mayor. I appreciate it.
Oh, okay, you're welcome. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Any notice of motions?
No,
Any giving of notice of motion?
no,
New or other business?
no, there is not. Oh,
Oh. There.
I just want to send a invite out from Mississippi Conservation that we're having a tour. So, and it's on Monday, the June 12th. And anyone who's interested in going to it, just give me a call or send me an email and I'll send you all the information and you can go and check out the Mississippi area.
Okay, good. Anything else? All right. There you go. All right, all those in favor of the motion to move into closed? Carried. All right. So recording's off.
we'll just wait till they put it all on.